couple minutes for folks to join.
Alicia.
Hey, Jim. Good to see you.
Good to see you. How are you?
Doing well, thanks. How about yourself?
Oh, good. All good.
Awesome. Jim and I were on a RIMPEX team together for everyone on the call. So this is definitely Baldridge days here. It's pretty fun. Okay. All right, well, it's 2:45 my time, so I'll go ahead and get started as folks filter in. My name is Alicia Hoeltgen. I'm the Innovation Program Manager here at Elevations Credit Union. And I am very grateful to have been at this organization for about 13 years. The innovation program here is a couple of years old, so it's relatively new, but it's been a great part of our Baldridge journey, so I'm excited to share that with you. What we'll be covering today are a few things, sort of the history of innovation at Elevations as a program, and how we started to define it and what it means to us. Idea management, how we manage ideas here, all about our idea portal, our innovation process or framework, which is design thinking, that's what we use, and then testing and learning and our approaches to that. That is all just about 20 minutes, and then I'll open it up for some Q&A, some deep dives into anything you guys would like to see or learn more about. Just like the other sessions today, focused mostly on trying to get some answers to your questions and conversation, whatever you'd like to discuss about innovation here. But we'll go ahead and get started. So what is innovation at Elevations? I first embarked on answering this question with a former Elevations executive, Pete Reichs. He's the Baldridge quarterback you heard about if you joined the opening session today, and I would be remiss if I didn't share the extraordinary vision and impact he had on how we define and how we've deployed innovation at Elevations. So this question, what is innovation, was by far the biggest we received when we started to discuss this program with our stakeholders internally. It's easy to think of what innovation is in general, right? You can think about Apple with their life-changing product suite, Amazon with their complete redesign of what e-commerce is and the way that consumers shop, all those huge companies. But we're a credit union, and so what is innovation here? This was sort of a surprise to us, to Pete and I, when we started to get this out there, because creativity is one of our core values, and we define creativity here as we are dedicated to learning and innovation. So we were kind of surprised, but we knew that we needed to do some more work then to define what we meant by it before we could launch a program. And at first, we looked to the Baldridge definition of innovation, but as most of you guys know, or probably know, the Baldridge framework is not prescriptive. So we had to go a little bit deeper than that. We started asking ourselves what success would look like for innovation at Elevations as a program. And then we met with a lot of stakeholders at different levels of the company, went through a couple of iterations, and eventually landed on this definition here. So I'll read it out loud real quick. Innovation is applying our creativity to generate and execute ideas that create new value or capture value in new ways for our membership, employees, and community. That's it. That's our definition. That's the answer to us. And it's because of who we are as an organization. If you followed Elevations or if you've attended other sessions today, a lot of this will sound pretty familiar to you. It relates to our core values and our competencies and who we are. But that's what we've been saying our definition is of innovation. And so, okay, that's our definition. But still, some folks want to know, what does innovation look like then at your organization? And for this, we looked to the Baldridge framework again. And based on that definition, we know it may look like adopting new ideas, in the form of new processes or new technology or new products or even brand new business models. And then we also looked elsewhere. So what can innovation look like? My favorite model is one here that's shown on the screen. It's the Dublin Innovation Wheel, provides a bunch of different types of innovation. And if you're interested in innovation, learning more, I'd recommend checking out their website. There are definitions and a deep library of examples for each of these definitions, which I found really helpful in my work here. But for us, achieving every version of innovation was still not really the point, which brings me back to the message we had when we started. And that message was that, sure, there's a lot of different types of innovation, and you might think of revolutionary innovation, that completely new idea for completely new users that you never thought of before. But we were very clear from the beginning that that was maybe going to be 1% of what we were after with the program at Elevations. Instead, we anticipated a lot of incremental innovation. So, as you know, we're a very process-oriented organization. And so what we thought we might see a lot more of is creative ways to look at problems. Maybe we would see some introductions of existing ideas to serve existing users and maybe just create new value. That was what we expected to see the most of. So with that in mind, we had our objectives for our program. 1, we wanted to enable innovators. 2, we wanted to build innovators, which was offering guidance to sort of aid the creative process. And then the third thing we wanted to do was facilitate innovation. So this was all about bringing people together to harness the power of our collective creativity. With those ideas in mind, with those goals in mind, we set up 3 different elements of a program to start with. The first one was our idea portal. It's a forum for employees to share their ideas and think creatively and cross-functionally with each other and to have a voice. Then there's our design thinking framework, which is the process we use for innovation. It's to get as systematically focused on our members as we can when we're designing our innovative solutions, and to provide tools for those who are here so that they can really be innovative or creative or unlock those capabilities. And then we have our test and learns. This is just because sometimes the hardest part with innovation is getting started or pushing forward, or more likely getting okay to try something out, even if the likelihood of failure is high. And so that's one of the other elements we have, where I facilitate test and learns in those circumstances to help us break through those barriers. So next, I'll dive through into each of these elements. The first one being the idea portal. So we call the idea portal Elevate. And like I said already, we have a ton of creative employees around here, and we're really full of great ideas at Elevation. So thanks to our commitment to the Baldrige framework and a lot of really strong approaches in various areas like process management and performance management and feedback management, we have a lot of ways to take in feedback, including creative ideas, and pull them into our day-to-day discussions at Elevations. That said, we felt when we were starting up this program that there was still something missing that could be solved by a moderated forum of ideation. So to give you an example of what I mean, we have a tool called Make Us Better that was launched around 2017 that was put out there to enable employees to submit feedback to Elevations on behalf of our membership. And when we got out and started to talk with employees about this and how it relates to innovation, we heard that they had a great way to submit that feedback, but not awareness of whether or not those ideas would be shared and supported by others, no way to discuss them cross-functionally with teams and team members outside of their own, and then no real way to build on those ideas or change or enhance them. So that was the reason why we decided to pursue an idea portal. We knew we wanted something where people could float ideas and chat about them and gain insight from others, and maybe just have a place to have their voice be heard, in other words. So what I see right here is our innovation homepage. It includes links to our idea portal, submitting an idea, and also resources and tools in our design thinking framework. And I can walk you guys through that after if you'd like. This was our first version of the idea portal, though, where folks could submit an idea, as you see there on the right, or see ideas, as you see on the left. This was built on an old SharePoint 2010 model. I like to say it was my very first test and learn, because we knew we didn't really love it, but we figured we better get something out there and try it out. And we were able to validate our hunch. So there were ideas out there, and people wanted to talk about them. People wanted to collaborate on them. And a lot of times those ideas came from places outside the team that had the ability to do something about them. So one of the examples that's shown here is actually an idea that an employee got while he was working from home in the same room as his wife. She had these things rolling on her screen that were like core values of her company or upcoming events at her company. And he asked the question, could we do this at Elevations? We shared this idea ultimately with a lot of employees, got really great feedback that yes, they'd love to see that. We connected it then with our internal communications team. And so that's just an example of how we learned that by having this portal, we could actually identify some cross-functional conversations to result in an idea that could be explored for deployment. So then we watched and learned on that first version for a year or so, and we launched a version 2.0. And there were a couple of really great cycles of learning we had with this. One of which was we really realized we needed to put the idea portal in the same place that employees do their work. So it's actually living in Teams, Microsoft Teams. I don't know how many of you may have adopted Microsoft Teams through the pandemic as we did. But it's a great online tool where folks are doing their work and having conversations with their teammates. And we thought it would be a great place to put an idea portal. In doing that, we had results of over 70% employee engagement in that portal in 2021, which was one of our goals. We set out to have really high engagement, and we were able to measure that by idea views and clicks and comments, and that's been really beneficial for us. So I get a question a lot, which is, what's your criteria for an idea? What do you accept as an idea? And ultimately, I accept pretty much anything as an idea. I think it's great to get conversations started. We have a little bit of criteria that says if something really should not be posted there, I moderate the site, I can take it down. But other than that, we categorize ideas by our member centricity model. So is it member loyalty focused, meaning something like a member or community product and service? Is it high performance culture, meaning something like employee services or maybe benefits? There's been a couple of benefit ideas that have come through. And then financial sustainability, which is anything having to do with our efficiency or our revenue. But that's the idea portal in a nutshell. And as I said, if you guys would like to see that, we can dive into that in the Q&A later. But now I'll move into the design thinking framework that we use. And this design thinking framework was a response to one of our innovation challenges with the program, which is how might we build innovators, or at least build them up? I said already that we hire and coach to our core values, so getting employees to think creatively isn't really what we were after. Instead, we wanted to focus on sharing tools that would enable and empower employees to unlock that creativity, or communicate a creative idea, or vet a creative idea with their peers. In other words, just determining whether it was desirable by the members they were trying to design for, or the internal customers they were trying to design for, if it is viable with the potential to add true value to the business or the value stream or the process area, and then if it's feasible or possible, basically from a technological standpoint most often, but also sometimes just from capability standpoint, time, resources, money, that kind of stuff. So we needed a framework for this, and we shortcutted it quite a bit because Pete Reichs had attended an executive innovation course at the Stanford D School, and he came back with a bunch of amazing materials, and he was really thrilled about it. They talked a lot about design thinking for innovation, and I, long story short, leveraged those presentations and that workshop materials, and then some Google searching, a lot of Google searching, to figure out what kind of tools we could leverage here at Elevations. Okay, so design thinking is awesome. It's truly one of my favorite frameworks. There's a lot of them, like I said, and what is really great about it is that it's very human-centered. So it encourages organizations to focus on the people they're creating for, which leads to better products, services, and internal processes. It also sort of prescribes that when you sit down to create a solution for a business need, the first question, and the one that should be top of your mind, is what's the human need behind it? So all of those different examples of design thinking have been refined into a version of a framework that works for us. And these are the stages that are included in it. So empathize, I talked about that already, really beginning with a deep understanding of the people we're designing for, defining our problem with a meaningful and actionable problem statement that we can focus on solving. Ideating is what it sounds like. It's coming up with alternative ways and ideas to and solutions for the problem you're trying to solve. A common set of terms used in this area and that we talk about here at Elevations is divergence, sort of going broad and wild and crazy with your ideas, get as out there as possible, because there's no bad ideas and we can always learn about them. And then convergence, which is more like coming back together to find that desirable, feasible, and viable solution. Then there's prototyping, which is all about producing early and inexpensive scaled down versions of the idea so that we can test them out. So testing is just as it sounds. It's all about putting a prototype out to a real member or to someone who represents a member or to someone who represents an internal customer or a partner so that we can give actionable feedback and improve it before we really spend a whole lot of time and resources deploying something. Finally, for our framework, we have implement, and that's just for us where we integrate with our other approaches. So we have process improvement and business process management, and we have project management and portfolio management and product management. And so our design thinking innovation framework really serves to connect with those, is kind of the idea. All right, so I'll just reiterate what's great about it. By training human-centered design, I can bring creative competence to an employee. And we did that in our first year that we launched. Basically, making that statement that you're a human-centered designer. In other words, you have agency over the products and solutions and processes that you're working on. And it is important that you have a voice in making sure those things are meeting your member or your customer's needs. Also, a great part of the design thinking for us is that making an idea real really reveals a lot that just talking about it or planning it does not. When the goal is to get really impactful solutions out into the world, it's hard to live in abstractions. And so we spend a lot of time trying to make concepts real as much as possible, and then getting handed actionable feedback about them. So how we deploy design thinking is that we launched this initially with some workshops and some training. And we got a toolkit that contained all of the templates for design thinking that I chose to leverage out on our Peak SharePoint intranet. And then I added some workshops. And since the program launched in early 2020, we quickly moved from in-person to virtual workshops, which still worked out pretty well. The goal was to train about design thinking and about innovation, but also to train in those mindsets by giving folks an opportunity to use the tools in the toolkit. And the workshops were fun and engaging and interesting. And we received really great feedback from about 45 employees that went through it that first year, which was awesome. But I have to say, I really expected, we had high hopes that we'd have a bunch of folks out there who were then designers and had these tools at their fingertips and could be, using them and solving problems that they have day to day. And the reality was still really cool, but it was not quite what we expected in that way. We have a few users who leverage some of these tools in their work, but more often than not, I facilitate test and learns using this design thinking framework. And that's the most common use of this toolkit right now. So with that in mind, let me tell you about the last piece of the program, which is testing and learning. Now, what's interesting about human-centered design is that I think it's really uniquely situated to help us get to those three things I've been talking about: desirability, viability for the business, and then feasibility, whether or not it's possible to do. We start with the humans and we understand their hopes and their fears and their needs, and then we quickly uncover what's most desirable. But that's only one lens we look through things at. And so we use design thinking as part of what we call test and learns to really try out ideas to see if we can get them to meet all three of these things. Is it still desirable? Is it still viable? Is it still feasible? And in that way, we're able to really come up with solutions that are hopefully more successful and sustainable. So test and learn start from many places. They could come from something with a lot of momentum on the idea portal, or maybe it bubbles up through our strategic planning or our business planning process. Or maybe it's a problem that the business needs to solve, or an opportunity we feel we have to respond to, or sometimes something that a team member just has a hunch or hypothesis about, and they don't have enough information to build a business case to get it to project management, and so it'll end up coming my way. I'm here as sort of an internal consultant to support by providing tools from the toolkit to facilitate a test and learn. So most often how that goes is we start off with a hypothesis, and I'll give you a couple of examples of a hypothesis we've dug into. So one is we believe that by putting a full member-centric view of the full breadth and depth of a member's relationship with us, we'll have more impactful and more meaningful relationships with our members. That was one hypothesis we explored this year. Another is we believe that offering in-person Spanish classes to our employees will result in increased ability and comfort to serve primarily Spanish-speaking members in our branches. So that was one that we explored last year. From a hypothesis like that, I lead us through the design thinking activities. So that includes empathizing with the member or internal customer we're solving for. It includes defining the problem, and then coming up with ideas and then prototyping, which is where we, like I said, build a low res or small or drawn out version of an idea to be tested. Then we go into testing, and with testing, we have a test plan. And that test plan usually includes things like who are the segments or the test groups that we're going to roll this out to? How long are we going to test for? Who's going to support it? Sort of like a mini project plan. And then how are we going to measure success? Who's going to say whether or not this test was successful enough to proceed with a solution like this on a broader scale? All those sorts of things are captured in a test plan. And by the way, sometimes the test plan actually, once the rubber hits the road, results in a relook at our prototypes and then maybe even other parts of the approach. But in general, we go through our test plan and we get to launch. And then we monitor that test, that whatever's been rolled out, the product or the solution or the idea or the process improvement. And then we take a look at those results. Once we do that, we can come to a decision. And sometimes that decision is actually going to lead us all the way back to our hypothesis, and we'll start over, or we'll take another look at what we thought to be true, or take another look at ideas that we had come up with before then trying to launch those in a test. Sometimes we come up with ideas that, well, sometimes we launch the idea, which is great, but that's awesome. But then other times what happens is we come up with ideas or prototypes or test plans that we need to put in our back pocket for future exploration. And to be honest, this has been the hardest learning for me as part of our innovation program. My current leader, Kathleen, told me this story about someone she used to work with who came up with the idea for the Target gift card and presented it to their leaders at Target. And at the time, it was a crazy concept. Who would want to pay us money to put their own money on a card that can only be used at our store, they would say. And so it wasn't pursued. And every once in a while, this person would bring the idea back up and it wouldn't be pursued again. And one day, as you all now know, the idea was finally adopted and rolled out, and a great success. And I try to remind myself of that all the time, because we have a lot of great ideas here. And sometimes maybe the timing isn't right, or the idea isn't ready, or the market isn't ready, or there's something else going on at the organization or elsewhere that means we don't have the resources to work on it. But what we do here is we archive all of our ideas, all of our tests and learns, all of our materials, and then I look at them on like a biannual basis just to see if maybe we can pull it back out and maybe the timing is right. So what are all the things I've learned then, or the top things I've learned? I've got 3 of them for you in 2 years of managing an innovation program for a Baldrige winning organization like Elevations. One is that how you define and monitor innovation is really important, and systematic approach to innovation is really critical. As you saw there could be a lot of moving and shifting, jumping around within the framework while you're getting innovative, but having a framework helps with creative confidence, and adopting something like design thinking can drive you to then make things and test them and maybe get it wrong and keep on rolling. So in doing that, you can still be secure in the knowledge that you'll get where you're needing to go, and that you're bound to innovate along the way. Another thing I've learned is that iteration is really key. Get comfortable with trying and getting feedback and trying again. It's the only way to ensure your innovative ideas have legs before you allocate a ton of time and resources and money on them. And try as small scale as you possibly can. I can say I have learned, and I'm still learning the hard way, this tip, which is that there's almost always an easier way to test something than you initially think. And then lastly, failure is an incredibly powerful tool for learning, but I am a bit of a perfectionist, so I will tell you that I really struggle with this aspect of innovation. For that reason, let's not call it failure, let's call it learning. That's a key concept of Baldrige framework after all. And at the heart of innovation is an understanding that not all of our innovative ideas are going to work, even if they're good ones. So I try to remind myself that if we adopt the right mindset, we'll inevitably learn something. And in my opinion, the other key here to succeed in innovation is to be okay with taking risks. If you refuse to take them, you're bound to close yourself off from a real chance to innovate. And that is what I have to say. So now I'll open it up to questions.
I have many questions, my friend, as you might know. So let me start with the first one. Could go back because I think it's an important thing. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you are linking your criteria for an idea to your strategic approach of your organization?
Okay.
I think I saw that as a graphic, and you're
yes.
Full disclosure, I do the strategy part of Baldrige, so I was attracted to that. Okay.
Okay. I think this is what you're talking about. Let me see if I can share it again here.
You know where you had financial sustainability,
yes.
performance excellence,
member loyalty,
and it was all around member centricity, right?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
But is there a and I understand that and it's really nicely written, but do you have something that gets very, like checklist functional and or a scorecard kind of thing? So if somebody rolls in with an idea and you put it up against this matrix of, let's make sure it hits all of our key things, and you've got a way to evaluate that, is what that was.
Yeah, I do. So so there's a couple of things. One is when an idea comes in the first place, and sorry, I'm trying to share now the idea portal. When an idea comes in the first place, there's actually only a few areas they can put an idea in. So here's the idea portal. And if someone wants to submit a new idea, they have to choose from one of our campaigns, we call them. And so that's how that alignment is made. They select, and I'll say that I really benefit from the fact that so many of our organization really understands these three things, even new ones that are coming into the organization, this is what we talk about, are these things, even in our all staff meetings. And so I don't have to spend a whole lot of time doing that. But once an idea comes in, if it reaches the point where I am going to assess it, I do look for the opportunity for it to respond to our KPIs in those areas. So for example, if they said member loyalty, I'm thinking, okay, does this tie to NPS, or does it tie to, does it not, basically? And if not, then I'll probably end up moving it to something else, or just saying it doesn't get credit for that.
Right. But that makes sense, because if it's a viable idea, you know, are you already measuring it? Is there some way, does it already, you know, okay, that's good. That's good. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, okay, I'll wait. I'll let somebody else.
Okay. And I do have a couple of folks here helping out with the chat. So feel free to raise your hand or put something in chat, or whatever's needed.
Well, I'll jump in, because I have a related one that kind of comes back around the other end. So
Okay.
do you have, and it's measure, you know, tracking, measuring and reporting the progress of your whole innovative process, right? So progress of the process, right? So do you report to your supervisors, to your managers, to your senior leadership that, you know, how many ideas we got, how many percentage of them were viable, how many percentage of them actually went all the way through and got adopted, how many of them are in the archive? Is that something that you kind of keep track
We
of?
used to. We
Okay.
used to. So the first year that we launched, we were, or the program was a part of our strategic plan. So what that meant for us was that we had to report up to the board on a regular basis, on a monthly basis and quarterly basis, how it was progressing. And we used to have multiple measurements. So one was engagement, as I mentioned, about how many people were engaging in the portal and then in the design thinking workshops. And then the other was ideas initially. So it was number of ideas and how many were making their way into which stages. But I'll tell you that eventually that just became less relevant. Over time, we found that sometimes we'd have a really great idea that maybe would be worth a lot for the organization. And sometimes there were really little ideas that we're getting through that were still really valuable in their own way, but the number of ideas coming through became less relevant, if that makes sense.
Right.
So right now, what we still continue to measure is engagement. And then separately from that, when we do a test and learn, we measure the effectiveness of that test and learn. So we stopped looking at the ideas and how they were coming through and started focusing on the solutions, if that makes sense.
Right. Because if I can paraphrase it, you know, kind of, so it seems to me once you adopted the innovative process organization, it didn't have to prove itself anymore. And then you just focused on keep using it and just, you know, taking advantage of people's, you know, people were encouraged, they would plug something in, it would go through the process. You'd focus on the idea as opposed to managing the process of things. Okay, good.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? I was told when everyone signed up for the conference today, there were a lot of statements that just sounded like, I want to hear more about innovation, but no specifics. So please, you have any of my time, anything you'd like to know, please ask. All right, I don't know, Jem, do you have any others?
I do. Just also full disclosure, I work in the water and sewer sector with utilities, and
Okay.
I'm one of a team of about 20 people, and we're writing a manual of practice for water sector utilities on innovation, right? So I'm one of like a chapter author on, and one of the chapters I'm writing is how to put together the criteria and the process for both internal pitches and external pitches, right? So part of it is like what you've described, Alicia, is that ideas come from inside the team, somebody that works in the lab, somebody that works in customer service, somebody works in a treatment plant. Hey, I got a new idea. How do you grab that, put it in so that it gets the right attention so that it might actually be an innovation, right? It's also a world where a lot of ideas come from the outside, from pure innovators themselves, some new person with a new widget that might reduce this or increase that or do whatever, all of our bajillions of processes that we have in cleaning up water, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it could be a new widget, it could be a new process, it could be some combination of the two. And so it could come from the innovator themselves. It could come from a manufacturer's rep with a new widget and they sell them. And it could be also driven by a regulatory agency too, where they are imposing a new set of things and said, thou shalt treat the water this way. And then people need to go follow that. And there's a link in there too. So that's why I'm asking all these questions, because we're trying to figure out how to put that together. So the question I was going to have, do you have many outside ideas coming into an organization like yours, as opposed to the employee smart people already in the building portal?
Yeah, yes, definitely. So one of the things about our program too is, as I already said, we've got a lot of creativity in the organization, and we've had to be that way for a long time. So similarly, we respond to regulations, right? Where something comes in, we have to make a change. We need to figure out how to do that.
Right.
And it's not always the case that those things come through my design thinking approach or through the innovation process. Sometimes they go through other methods like process improvement or a project request. But yes, they definitely come from other areas. Something else that happens a lot too, which is probably similar to what you were describing, is that there are fintechs out there who have really great innovative solutions to the common problems we're seeing all the time with our members. And I do a lot also of exploration of those things to see where they might serve to respond to the strategic plan or the business plan that we have. So sometimes something will come like that where it's actually a fintech solution, and I try to propose that to a business line leader who is responsible for the action plan and our action plans. And maybe they think yes, and they can just get it approved, but maybe they can't get it approved. And so then they come to me to say, hey, can you help me with a test and learn so that we can prove the case of this fintech technology?
Okay, so let me stay right with you on that one. So then do you hold that idea up against the same type of process that you would do internally? So you check it against your criterion. Yes, you're not going to do something that doesn't fit your culture, right?
Right.
As well as your function, right? I mean, you're right. So,
Yep.
so then once the idea comes back around to you, you treat it essentially the same as you would if it came from somebody on your credit union team already, correct?
That's right. Yep.
Good. That's helpful, because we actually have a chapter that says internal, external, and we're trying to see how much of it we repeat, right? Okay. Got it. That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, what else? Hand raised. Matt, hey.
Alicia, I used the button there. Pretty excited with myself that I found it.
Yay, you got it.
Thanks so much for the session here. This is very helpful. I'm just curious here relative to the stages that you have. The first one being empathize, which I wholeheartedly agree with. Curious if you have any like member segmentation or personas that you've defined for your current member base, that where if that comes into play as far as your empathy mapping and journey mapping, or if you find that the cycle here in the stage is more so just explicitly for the affected group relative to the idea that came into play.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it has come into play with our empathize in particular. And this was sort of a fun journey for us because when we first started with innovation, we didn't really have a really strong way of utilizing things like personas to really empathize with different individuals coming from different backgrounds. And we definitely leverage those. So one of the tools in our empathy toolkit is a persona. And actually, I might pull that up for you guys so you can see it. But we work with a team, whoever's helping us on this design thinking exercise, to flush out that persona. Like, who are we really solving for? Because sometimes we're solving for a general membership and we can keep it that high level, but sometimes not. We did a session on internships. This was about hiring and could we do something with our internships to make them either more interesting or more engaging or even just a better internship for folks who were going through it. And so we built a persona, a series of personas actually, for different interns that might be coming from different situations. And we leveraged that as part of design thinking. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that did. Thank you. Another question to stem off of that. Are your team members generally familiar with the personas that exist, or is that more so something, and the knowledge of the personas, is that more so something that's a function of, for instance, business intelligence teams, things of that nature?
Yeah, it depends on which team I'm working with. So usually, like if I'm trying to work on a test and learn with retail, for example, they probably won't be very familiar with the personas as we think about them. Like we have our credit union, so we work with Experian, and we get personas that look like different life stages based on your age and your demographics, and if they think you have children, all that kind of stuff. And so if I'm working on a design thinking session with our business intelligence team or with our marketing team, then yeah, we'll usually talk about that. But if I'm working with other groups like operations, we generally won't.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks. Another question here. Do you see with your phase 2 of your portal for your employees for capturing innovation, do you feel that the adoption increased primarily just because you're throwing it within a tool set that everyone uses day to day, such as Teams?
I think so. And I know that in part because we have a lot of new employees now who take a look at it. And we didn't really have that before. So I think it's a matter of, it's where your work is. It's right there on the left-hand side, right next to other things that we use all the time, like chat or Power BI. And so, yeah, I think that's been a big part of it. We tried really hard in the early days to push to get engagement through email and Yammer and that SharePoint portal. And it was a lot of work. But then all of a sudden we turned it on in Teams and it was a different story.
It's amazing how that works.
Mm-hmm.
And the tool that you're using embedded into Teams, I believe it's Velo, is that correct?
Yeah, they just happen to be a company that provides like intranet and SharePoint and Teams solutions, but there are tons of them out there.
Gotcha. Okay. I think that's all the questions that I have. Thanks so much.
Cool. Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for the question. Anybody else? Do you want to say hi anyway? I'm sure you've been sitting on video all day, or not on video, just sitting watching people on a screen. So feel free to say hello if you'd like. Okay. Jim, do you have something?
No, other than to thank you for sharing everything, and just I'll let you and me and Pete should talk after the fact. Maybe
Okay.
because I'd love to run some of the ideas that I have down, in draft for that section of the chapter and get your ideas on it. That'd be fun.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks.
Yeah. Because one of the other chapters is on measuring your progress as an innovative organization. And so some of the stuff that you mentioned about what you did and what you didn't, that'll be helpful there too.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I'll give another 10 seconds to make sure. But if not, we can depart. Cool. Thank you guys for joining. I hope you had a good day.
Good seeing you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.